Okay, so this is a little tutorial about how to make a very good tanking macro for threat. You're gonna have to need super macro add-on to get this to work probably, but you can probably download that from a lot of places. Probably already know about the add-on. It's a very popular vanilla one. Alright, so basically as you can see over here we got a couple of macros and then we got some regular abilities. We got our heroic strike, we got our cleave, then we got macro, bloodrage, macro, regular default attack, and we got a macro. And so basically we're making a macro that works as a chain. So you press one button and it'll start to use other macros at the same time, depending on a couple of conditions that we want to be setting up. So for example, our revenge macro, it's gonna be our pretty much a default tanking building threat button, right? So it looks like this. The first line is cast revenge, and then the second line is script klh tm underscore sunder. That's basically just what sunder armor looks like when you put it into a macro. If you do /cast sunder armor, then it can buck out your KTM. So that's just the way it works in a macro, that you have to type it like this to use sunder armor. So basically it'll cast revenge, and if it's on cooldown, then it casts sunder armor instead. Okay. Then we get to the third line, which is script use action 25. And that's this macro up here. So I'll get to what that does in a second. The use action 25 is the number on the action panel that the button has. For example, you know, if you move the buttons around, they're gonna have different numbers. Like this is 35, and if I put it here, that would be 34. So it's really important that you make sure that the numbers that you plug in is where those macros are on the bar. Like you can put them anywhere you like as long as you get the number right. But for simplicity, I would just suggest that you copy the setting that I have. That'll probably make it easier to get it to work the first time, and then you can move it around as you like. Okay, so it's using script use action 25. That's this auto attack macro I have here. But then it'll also do something else. It does script if unit mana, and that's just the way it looks like. For a warrior, that's obviously rage, but you still have to type in mana there in the code. So script if unit mana player is less than 14, then use action 32. And 32 would be 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, and 31, 32. Okay, so basically that is the stop heroic macro. So if you have less than 14 rage, then it will stop casting a queued up heroic strike. And that can be good because heroic strike is not the best ability to build threat when you don't have a lot of rage. You want to use revenge and you want to use sunder armor. They do more threat per rage point, and so you only really want to use heroic strike to build threat when you have rage to spare. And so if you're below 13 rage, you might not have enough rage to then cast a revenge or sunder armor on your next global cooldown, and that means you're wasting a little bit of efficiency by casting in a heroic strike. So then you want to cancel it, and that's what that macro does, or that line there. And then it does script if unit mana player is less than 19, then use action 31. And 31 is also stopping heroic strike, but that one checks whether you have procced the 5 out of 8 set bonus from the tier 2. It's called the Warrior's Wrath, and that reduces the rage cost of your next ability by 5, and that's why those two numbers are 5 rage points apart, right? Because it figures out that if you want to stop heroic strike when you have below 14 rage, then if you got the Warrior's Wrath, then that buffer becomes not less than 19 instead. So that's what that does. That means that if you're within those two, if you have between 14 and 19, then it will cancel Heroic Strike based on whether you have the effect. Okay, so that's that. And then the last line would be script if unit mana player less than 3, then use action 29, and that would be bloodrage. So if you're totally starved on rage and you cannot cast anything, then it will use bloodrage. But if you are at like 50 rage or even 25 rage, you know, if you still have enough rage to use your abilities, then it's not gonna waste blood rage. It's gonna try to save it until you really can't do nothing if you don't cast blood rage. So that's why that threshold is very, very low. All right, so now let's get into it. That's your revenge macro. You're just spamming that, and then it signalizes out to other macros on what to use. So the first one it sends a signal to would be action 25. So that's this one. That's the auto attack. Everything basics comes from this one. Later you'll also see that your shield bash, your shield slam, your whirlwind, pretty much all your abilities, you're gonna want to ask those abilities to trigger the 25 because it's a very default basic thing. So what does it do? Well, first it asks script if not is current action 26, then use action 26, and that means that if you're not auto attacking the monster, then it'll start to do it. Right? If that is not blinking, then it'll activate the auto attack. That's the first line. Then it's script use action 27, and that's this one underneath it. That's another macro, and that is this one. And so it does script if unit health player. And we're talking about health now. If it's below 800, then it casts Last Stand. And if it's below 550, then it'll use a superior healing potion or a major healing potion. Now, if you're in a raiding environment, you might not want to use your potion cooldown for a healing potion. But perhaps if you're that low on health, you have no choice. But that's up to you, really. Of course, if you don't want that, you can just remove that part of the macro there. But basically, why I put that in there was that's, you know, you basically don't have to worry about using Last Stand. You're not gonna have to worry about dying without having used Last Stand. Basically, it's gonna use it automatically once you drop below a certain amount of health, unless you really drop from, let's say, 1000 to 0 in one hit. But if you're at some point stop at like maybe 600 or 300 health, and you have a moment to cast Last Stand, it will cast Last Stand. So that's pretty neat. Alright, and then we are to script if unit mana, again that's rage, player is less than 20, or excuse me, is more than 20, then use action 28. And 28 would be Battle Shout, so it does script if not buffed Battle Shout, then cast Battle Shout. So it checks whether Battle Shout is up or not, and if it's not up, then it'll cast it. But only if you have more than 20 rage. Then the last line would be script if unit mana player is more than 24, then use action 30. And action 30 would be heroic strike if not cleaving. And that means that script if not is current action 35. If you have not queued up a cleave, then it'll queue up a heroic strike. And that means that if you want to cleave on a pack, yeah, then you don't want this to cancel the cleave to queue a heroic strike. You just want to finish those cleaves. And so this one basically just confirms that you are not actually cleaving something when you want to start heroic strike. If you really do want to swap, then you have to just, you know, use heroic strike manually. And that's why I got a keybind for it. So if you're setting up a cleave and you want a heroic strike instead, then you have to click a heroic strike manually. All right, so that's the auto attack here. So we go back and we go, okay, that was the use action 25, and we covered all the areas that it does. And we're back here. Then we go script: if unit mana player is less than 14, then use action 32. And 32 means stop heroic. Script spell stop casting. That means that if you have if you've queued up a heroic strike like this, and you press this macro, then it stops it, right? It stops a queued up heroic strike. Now, why would you want that? Well, didn't we already cover that? It's kind of late. I probably already covered this, but yeah. So you don't want to cast a heroic strike if that's gonna prevent you from using another ability that's smarter. You only really want to use heroic strike when you have above a certain amount of rage, and it checks for the Warrior's Wrath there. Okay, well, that's about it. Yeah. What else can we talk about? The shield bash here. Then it looks, they're not overly complicated. I mean, they really once you get past the first one, which covers all the basics, then you find that all the other ones are almost identical, right? They're pretty much identical. It's just the different rage costs that are changed, because they have different cost of rage. For example, if you're casting shield bash, then you want to cancel a heroic strike when you have less than, for example, like 17 rage, compared to when you want to cast shield slam, that buffer is 10 points higher, because shield slam costs 10 points more. So not overly complicated. It's just the first couple ones you need to set up, and yeah, good luck with it. That's to worry about. I'll try to see how it works in action here. Alright, so for simplicity's sake, I'm just gonna press R here and just see what happens. We should be getting a lot of rage because we have 2 elites on us now. Maybe not that much. For fuck's sake here. I'll just help them a little bit here. Okay, so what we want to see here, so it cast Battle Shout already. Figured out that was missing. We got 5 sunders up. We got Revenge being used every time it's ready. Let's see if we can get a little bit more rage, and let's watch the heroic strike. It's queuing up the heroic strikes, using that on whenever possible. So works pretty simple, right? One button for your battle shout, for your heroic strike, for your revenge, for your sunder armor, and for your blood rage. I mean, yeah. So you and your last stand and your healing potions. So yeah, I hope you enjoy the macro there.